Bob, and welcome to this Game Week 1 preview. We will discuss our final drafts and some differentials and also the optimal squad for each and every formation that I think. And Mitch, why don't you start off with your squad and your probable team?
I'm actually going to start with the other way around. I usually start with the goalkeeper, but after thinking about it, I'm actually going to start up front. Adams from Southampton is a new signing. Per recommendation from somebody that I'm actually looking at on screen right now, I put him in my squad because I needed a 6 million striker to fill in the void. You can see from the whole team that I've got three. Obviously, people usually have 2 or 3 big premium assets, but I've actually got 3 of the most expensive, albeit like $500,000 for Aguero or something like that. But I'm going to start off with Kane. Kane had a bad season last season, purely in my opinion, because he's got a lot of pressure on him at Spurs. He was riddled with injuries. He had 2 big injuries, whereas usually on average he only has about 1 injury a season. Both injuries to the same ankle as well, which was really, really bad for his recovery, even though he's a hard worker. And again, the pressure makes him, he feels like he doesn't have to carry the team, but he feels like if he's there, they're going to perform better, which obviously is, if you look statistically, is often the case when Son doesn't turn up. For me, Kane's an absolute bargain this season. 11 mil, you can't go wrong. He didn't get a hat-trick at all last season, and he averages 1.4 hat-tricks a season. So that means that by law of averages, he didn't have 1 last season, which means that he should be expecting 3 this season. So you'll probably see me keeping the armband on him for most of the season, especially all of the good fixtures and obviously the home fixtures as well. And he's English as well. I love him. He's as much my boy as Arnautovic was before he fucked off to China. So bye-bye, Arnie. So that's Kane for me. Fantastic price. Backup striker, I've got Xande Silva because I'm a West Ham fan and he's cheap. He fills the bench. And if we get injuries to Haller or Chicharito, he might play. And if I fancy sticking him in the squad, he'd be a huge differential because he is a good little player, but he's not getting enough game time. Moving into the midfield, other than 1 pick, and I'll explain that pick in a second, and obviously that has to do with price and fitting everyone in that I wanted to fit in. My midfield, I think, looks quite stacked. I've always been a firm believer that the fact that midfielders, even offensive midfielders, they get the 1 bonus point for a clean sheet. They are the most likely to get goals and assists, usually, in my opinion, and therefore have a more of a likelihood to attain bonus points. And then Fraser, Salah, and Sterling, I mean, they really kind of speak for themselves. Sterling's on absolute fire. Another British boy, a City boy as well, and obviously Manchester City again speak for themselves. Salah is someone that I felt like I put in because I had to put in. I gave Salah a lot of shit last season because I felt like he didn't live up to the hypes of the season before. I don't know why. I feel like teams kind of figured out what he was going to do and how he was going to do it, and they defended much better. Maybe they've come up with a new strategy. He's looked okay from the videos that I've seen from him in pre-season. And I feel like he maybe has a point to prove this season, considering all the flack that he got last. Although he still ended up FPL's highest scorer, albeit less points than he had the season before. But I still feel like he's got a point to prove. Barkley is another person that I think has been on fire in pre-season for Chelsea. Last season, he came in and he was banging left, right, and centre, and then it was the typical FPL kind of ghost vibe where everyone started putting him in and he completely ghosted from the squad, ghosted from returns, and everyone took him out and no one really saw him much for the rest of the season. But I'm hoping that with Lampard at the helm, they're obviously going to be on a huge new manager boost and bounce as any other team would do. But adding the fact that it's actually Frank Lampard at the helm, I feel like a lot of the Chelsea players are really going to get behind him and work really hard, and Barkley is somebody that I think is going to do that. Good price point as well. He didn't actually move from his price point from last season, which is interesting considering that whenever he did play, albeit that was a bit rare later on, he played quite well. I thought he played quite well, and he had some good returns. So the little differential pick is Hayden. Obviously, the biggest point is that he's a price filler at 4.5 mil. That's the cheapest that you can get for a midfielder. Newcastle are in a really, really shaky way at the moment, having issues with the owner still. He doesn't want to sell. He doesn't want to invest money. They didn't keep, I would probably say, was one of the best managers in the Premier League. who did an absolute madness, and then he came out and criticised him. I mean, you just don't do that when you don't know anything about managing a football team and you've got someone like Rafa Benitez at the helm. You just don't do that whatsoever. But for his price and looking at his points last season and looking at his heat maps as well, Hayden actually seemed like someone that I thought would be viable if I decided to play 5 in midfield, which I actually have gone for the starting game week so far because they're playing at home and it's the first game of the season. They might want to prove something to their fans, considering all the crap that they've been through this summer. Obviously, he might move, he might change. He probably spend a lot of time on the bench when they're playing away games or difficult games. Usually I would bench him in a home game, but because it is the first game of the season, I thought, you know what, he's gonna have a spot in the starting 11 for me. The back line I've got Simpson and Kelly that make up the really cheap end of my defender side. I've gone for 2 4 million defenders, which I know a lot of people won't agree with. It doesn't give me a lot of flexibility. I know that Simpson only really plays when there's injuries, and Kelly I think is going to play, but because Crystal Palace have injuries. But the fact that Palace have injuries mean that to some of their best defenders as well, Tompkins, Sacco, for example, and they've lost Wan-Bissaka, they're going to be a lot, and they haven't really made, as far as I'm aware, any big defensive signings. I think they're going to be a lot more leaky at the back. They're more fillers. I like Zinchenko. I think he plays really well. A certain friend of mine also highlighted him quite a while back when we were talking. Oscar, I think you know who that is. You're a massive fan, aren't you? So I took a leaf out of your book and I've taken the punt with Zinchenko because I think that if he plays and he plays well, he'll probably start over and above Mendy at the beginning. But he is somebody that you're going to have to review if Mendy starts to see more game time, because I think we'll all agree that even though he's got a lot of problems off the pitch and he's a bit injury prone, Mendy is a much better player than Zinchenko when he's fit and he's on form. Wan-Bissaka, I think, is going to solve a lot of Manchester's defensive issues. I don't think that he's going to be the saviour, but I think signing him alongside with Maguire as well is going to really solidify the back four. They've got a tough opening fixture with Chelsea, considering that I have Barkley in my team as well. That's a bit of a discrepancy. But looking at their fixtures moving forward and thinking about the way that Wan-Bissaka comes out with the clutch defensive saves, and he's really, really keen on doing things on the pitch that translate into bonus points in the FPL game. He made it to the cut for me, and I don't need to talk about Andrew Robertson because Andrew Robertson is just probably my favourite player in the Premier League. If you don't have Robertson in your team, you should have Robertson in your team. Even if you have Trent Alexander-Arnold. What will you say, sorry?
Dropping rules here. Rule number 1.
Rule number 1, Andrew Robertson. Rule number 2, Andrew Robertson. Rule number 3, Harry Kane for me. And then and Alisson behind the posts, because I know that a lot of people this season, after last season, wanted to double up on Liverpool defence. For me, I've doubled up on Liverpool defence in a slightly different way. Having Alisson is a defensive asset. You're not as likely to get an assist. I mean, probably, you might very rarely, like Edison did in the first game of last season, I think, or the second game. But he's good with his hands. He's good with his feet. When he is the last man with the striker, he keeps his cool. And he has got a very, very strong defensive line in front of him. And for me, that extra $500,000 made the difference when I was shaping my squad, rather than having doubling up with, for example, Robertson and Van Dijk at 6.5, or if I wanted to go the full blow and go Trent Alexander-Arnold, that's an extra $1,000,000. And in my opinion, I don't think everyone that plays likes to have a premium goalkeeper. And usually I don't as well, but it's my way of getting into that double Liverpool defensive setup for my team. And at the end of the day, I kind of feel like one of the easiest decisions to make when you're playing the game is actually, I don't want a premium keeper anymore. And it's a very simple swap from someone, I think, along with Edison, they're both at 6 mil. I can drop it to 5. If I'm feeling really, really gutsy, I can drop it to 4.5. And then you're talking about 1.5, maybe even 2.5 mil in the bank to upgrade, maybe a defender that you're probably looking at more likely to upgrade, a midfielder. So, for example, for me, Hayden, or a striker. So again, if I wanted to maybe jump a lot, I could upgrade Adams if he's not performing, or if I wanted to have a more viable kind of 3-man swap in up front, I could upgrade Xande Silva. So that is my team. Kevin the Brexit FC, because what's going on in my country at the moment is just it's just an absolute shit show, and I was trying to find something that I thought was clever. And I love Kevin De Bruyne, but I love Brexit even more, obviously.
Kevin had to exit your draft, so it's fitting also.
Exactly.
Yeah. So just people who will see my squad next up will see a lot of similarities. I'm just a little bit unsure about Hayden, but you feel what I feel. It's not that he's bad or anything, but I just feel I would rather have like a 4.5 goalie and like a 6 million midfielder, because then it's easier to swap around the midfielders, and it's easier to find and jump onto someone who is like mad value, like Jota was last season, and he's like outperforming his value. So I'd like that balance. But anyway, otherwise, not much more to say. I think I preferred Shaw to Wan-Bissaka, but it's close. But I think Shaw is more prone to take a shot every now and then, and I think he's going to outscore Wan-Bissaka. But it's probably very, very close. So if you like him more, I can see that too.
Yeah. The other thing when I was considering either Wan-Bissaka or Shaw, as much as I love Shaw, and I think he's a great player, he can be, from what I've seen anyway. I mean, I've only seen Wan-Bissaka for one season, but he didn't really get injured. He only got 2 red cards, which I suppose doesn't really help his case either. But Shaw is more injury prone, even though he is more offensive. But I think that unless United start to score tons of goals, which they weren't really doing last season, and they haven't really signed anybody offensive to start making that happen, unless Rashford comes out in a madness and Martial performs and Pogba starts to be Pogba all the time rather than being his cocky, I'm going to play for 2 games and then go off for 3 self. Those like clutch 1-0 wins that United probably will often get against some of the lesser teams where they should be scoring more. I feel like Wan-Bissaka has more of a chance to get defensive bonus points. But then at the same time, I completely see your point when you say that Shaw is more likely to take a shot, more likely to get an assist, more likely to make a key cross. So I'm still tossing it up. I know that this video's final draft, but we all know that it's never really final draft until 11:59 a.m. on the 9th of August, really.
Yeah, especially since we haven't heard any like press conferences. So let's go to my team, because that's where I'm at. I have, for instance, Laporte, who's an injury doubt, and who I'm a little bit like, I want him in my team, but if Pep says something in the press conference, then he's out for maybe Zinchenko or Walker. And same thing with Alexander-Arnold. I want to play him, but if Klopp says something in the press conference about him being like more of maybe a rotation risk with Gomez, then I'm probably going for Robbo instead. Otherwise, you saw the same midfield. Basically, you have Hayden as well, but I have 4 in midfield, but it's the same midfield, so yeah, I like it, of course. Yeah, and I think Fraser is great value. Barkley is a risk, but he's so explosive, and showed that last season. And he could be a punt and someone who like increases your team value by a lot. So that's my only punt, really. The others are pretty safe and nailed-on players. The one other question mark that I can see is maybe Jota, but I just want him for 6.5 million in that slot. I don't like King as much in Bournemouth because he can maybe get rotated out with Solanke or so I like my team. I tried a draft with De Bruyne instead of Fraser, and that meant like going cheaper in defense basically. But I think this probably has a better flexibility, and I prefer the 4-4-2 formation because it's basically one transfer to any other formation, except I think 5-2-3, because that's 2 transfers away. But any other formation, I think it's 1 transfer away. So I think it's a good starting point this season. And I think one more thing I want to mention is McGovern on the bench. I had Button on the bench, but I realized Button had very high ownership, and there is a world where he gets transferred out on the wild card and drops in value. if there's another like 4 million goalkeeper emerging. So yeah, I like my team. You can't have them all. I'd like to see Kane coming in, Aubameyang coming in, but I just feel from the preseason, Sterling he's making so like incredible runs right now. He's playing up top, obviously, but still, I think Guardiola has said something to him because his runs are like, he's one-on-one with the goalkeeper a lot more recently. Of course, the opposition hasn't been great, but still, versus Liverpool, he could have easily scored a hat trick but he's Sterling, so we say that, but then he scores 1 goal, so that's typically Sterling. But it's just nice to see a player with that kind of involvement. Those two will be really, really fun to try to nail the captaincy on, and also kind of hard. So I think I'm going to make myself like a rule, and I'll try to follow that as good as possible. It might be that to like always captain the home player, or always captain the one with a better fixture difficulty rating. But I think you need to have a strategy for that, so you don't get stressed out when the decision is there.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you as well. Do you not just a question for your team? Do you not think? I know that I know probably the reason why you have both of them. That's because of the really good fixtures. You know who I'm probably going to say as well. But do you not think that it's a bit risky doubling up on Fraser and Wilson?
Yeah, it's
a little bit. It's good.
A little bit. Yeah, it's a calculated risk because Fraser and Wilson often link up. So Fraser gets the assist and then Wilson score. And let's say Fraser gives him the assist and then he hits the post. That's like a huge amount of points that I won't get. But when you get them, it's nice. And looking at the schedule, I think it's more likely that Wilson will score than So yeah, it's certainly a risk. But if you look at them individually, I like the value a lot of them. But as you say, having them both makes it a little bit risky. But I just think since there's good value in them, I don't want to focus too much on that. They have a great schedule. They're only facing like Manchester City, and that's at home. So yeah, it's hard, but it's at home at least.
We remember what they did to Chelsea at home last season in game week 30 or game week 29. Don't you remember what happened there? It was the Wilson and Fraser. It was the Wilson and Fraser show. They both got a brace and both assisted the other's brace as well, and they smashed Chelsea 4-0 last season. I think it was like game week 28 or game week 29 or something. So if they're the duo to have, they are the duo to have.
Yeah, they like to play at home, certainly.
Obviously as a fan, I just want to shout out. I feel really, don't get me wrong, I feel really, really shit for having none of my players in my squad at all, in my 15 player squad, or my 11 man start for game week 1. But differentials for me would be a lot of the West Ham players. I feel that we have again, second season in a row, we have a really, really tough opening few fixtures. We're at home to City, where I can maybe see us scoring a goal, but I can't see us winning. Then we're away to Brighton, and Brighton are our bogey team. We lose to Brighton home and away. And then after that, we again don't have the easiest fixture. We're away to Watford, and Watford tend to do well at the beginning of the season. It's really only game week 4 and our home game against Norwich where I'm really expecting us to come out, which is kind of the same as last season. We lost the first 4, so hopefully this season we only lose the first 3. And I love our signings. I love Sebastian Haller and I love Pablo Fornals, and I think they're both incredible players. They played really well in pre-season. They need more time to gel, but for me, those two. Even thinking about the fact that Lanzini's come back, he's like a new signing because he basically didn't play the whole of last season. Yarmolenko is again like a new signing because he played the first 5. He didn't play the first 4 that we lost, and then Pellegrini played him and he scored 3 goals and assisted 1 in 2 games, and then got injured and spent the rest of the season out. So those 4 players for me could be massive differentials if West Ham start picking up form. I hate to say it as a fan, but I personally don't believe in our first couple of fixtures at the very least. I don't like Brighton away because I just don't like Brighton away, and Man City at home. Even though we're at home and it's the first game of the season, they're still Manchester City. But for me, differentials, look at the West Ham players.
Yeah, okay. I was going to talk about my... in the next segment, I'm going to talk about the best squad for each formation according to me. So it's going to be influenced by my original squad, obviously, because those are the players that I like. But yeah, so these are the formations that, according to me, if you play the formation, then I would play this squad in that formation. But as I've said, I like the 4-4-2 the best. With that said, let's look at the others. If you want to play a 3-4-3, this is how I would play it. I want to spend a lot in defense, but still not on my goalkeeper. As I said, I think it's better to try to find a value player around 6 mil than having the goalkeeper, even though it's not a bad strategy. It's certainly okay, but if you want to take a gamble and hit those high ranks and get those high team values, I suggest trying to find like a guy that's in this team that's not in my team, Perez. As long as maybe Sigurdsson isn't that kind of a guy, but he's a stable guy, and you see Perez, Yoda, King are around that price point that I think will increase your team value if you find the right guy.
I like Perez as well because Perez is quite explosive.
Yeah, he could really be a gem this season.
Yeah.
And looking at, well, I have the next one is a 3-5-2. Very close to that last one, except Barkley instead of King, and then Alexander-Arnold was upgraded, I believe. Yeah, instead of Van Dijk. So it's small differences, but this is my 3-5-2. I just love Barkley as a punt. So as you see in this formation, it also includes 3 like punt players, so to say. At the same time, I don't see Perez and Jota being like high risk players. I'd rather say that their floor is pretty high and also their ceiling is pretty high. So it's really Barkley who it comes down to, who is very, very explosive but a little bit cheaper. Let's look at the 4-3-3. There is 3 City players. I really like trying to fit in 3 City and 3 Liverpool players. But if I had to choose one of those teams to not have 3 up, I would prefer City because it's a little bit unclear how they are lining up. So it might like emerge since nailed on. We don't know yet. KDB might be fantastic once again. We don't know that yet. But when it comes to Liverpool, I think we have a better idea of how Klopp is going to play in general. So you can go for 3 of those without the same risk of getting it wrong. So as you see in every draft here, I just have Salah and Sterling. I think I would be afraid to watch any game that they're not in. And yeah, they're great captaincy options. Yeah, this 4-3-3 is with Jimenez, which is the only formation I think with Jimenez, and so it's a little bit risky with that double up. Yeah. But this is from our solver, so it's not entirely my team. It's a little bit of my own predictions, but also what the solver thinks will be best balance and value for money. If you look at the 4-5-1, we have also, it's a little bit different. It emphasizes on like Fraser and Perez and Sigurdsson. So if you like the mids more than the forwards, which I do, I would certainly look more towards this kind of lineup.
Yeah.
And Jota is like in a nice price point if you want to go to Delafeu or Che Adams, that kind of stuff. but also a little bit risky if Jota doesn't play. So it's a tough price point. That I think it's hard to get it right away with that 6 mil forward player. It could be Chris Wood, had a fantastic preseason. Could be Yoda. Well, we have a 5-4-1, which obviously is very similar. The difference is the Liverpool defensive double up.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, which I like, of course. You see Robertson and Alexander-Arnold, fantastic pair to have. And yeah, I really like this formation. You have 3 City and 3 Liverpool, and 4 of those are in the back along with Digne. It looks like a very secure lineup. And Perez and Jota, as I said, team value can go up with those kind of players. So this is really, I really like this actually. Yeah, but see, it's close to my 4-4-2, but Sigurdsson is not for me, so I have Wilson instead, and I have Barkley as a punt instead of Perez, but this is kind of similar to my own. So the 5-3-2 looks really good as well. Same kind of thing going on actually, but just Wilson instead of Sigurdsson. The thing I don't like about this five at the back, it's a little bit inflexible. You have to do 2 transfers if you want to go to a 3 at the back. If that shows that is the best, but this does look really good, really solid, kind of safe, I would say, at least if the defenders perform. So the last one as well, 5 at the back, 5-2-3. So the only midfielders are Salah and Sterling here. It's kind of fun information to look at. And you have the Liverpool at the one end and the City at the other end. So it's
and Digne as well.
And Digne, yeah, he's like this monster CB in this picture. Yeah, so the real MVP.
He is the real MVP.
I managed to get Pickford in here, but you could downgrade him and upgrade maybe Murray or Wilson to VAR. And yeah, I don't like seeing Glenn Murray there, but he's there.
Come on. Glenn Murray, he comes on, he scores a goal, he goes off, he goes home, and he has his cup of tea, sits there with his wife. I scored another one. I'm only 38, waving the flag.
But this season, I don't know. He should be getting less and less play time. Actually,
I want to see. What's his name? I want to see. Is it Locadia or Locadia? Or I want to see him getting more game time. He's younger. He's fresher. Brighton don't have a bad squad. Pascal Gross should be fit as well. I mean, he's basically like a new signing for them. He spent the whole of last season on the bench or not even on the bench in the treatment room, didn't he? So. It's going to be like a new signing for them, and I think that Locadia needs to get more game time. Although I love Murray because it's Murray. He always gets the goal when he needs to. He always scores against West Ham. I don't know how. Every game he scores against West Ham. He loves scoring against us.
It's a good insight from a West Ham fan, and yeah, he's on pens too, and the VAR. That is coming in to Premier League. We don't know its effect yet. So yeah, Murray doesn't seem like a total stupid move, but it's not for me. He's not explosive enough. I don't see him getting enough game time.